Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Life After Undergrad panel. Thank you all so much for being here and for watching. So I think we should start a little bit with having some introductions. So Samantha, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So my name is Samantha Rupert. So I currently work at BAE Systems as a program manager, and I did my undergrad degree at Northeastern University in industrial engineering, and then I did my graduate degree with Duke University in engineering management. So I've been with BAE for about 5 years, done a few different roles with them, starting off in more of an engineering, more technical role, and then slowly moved into more management to get to where I am now.
That's really cool. Akanshka, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Akansha. I work as a machine learning engineer in Google Brain for the last 3 years. And over the last 7 years, I have worked at Microsoft Research and at Princeton. I did my PhD at Stanford and my undergraduate actually in India at IIT Delhi. And I've had some really fun set of research projects across the board, ranging everywhere from machine learning to networking to edge computing and building systems that span across fields and are useful to people.
Likita, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Karen, for having me here today. My name is Likita Patha. I graduated from Virginia Tech with a bachelor's in electrical engineering. And post-graduation, I spent my time in software development and product management. I started my career as a PM at Microsoft, working on Visual Studio, Intune, and Intune for Education. I then transitioned to Amazon to work on Alexa AI. While at Amazon, I actually took a year-long leave of absence to serve as a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow in the federal government. And I actually just wrapped that up about 2 weeks ago and currently taking some time off before starting my next adventure.
That's so cool. And last but not least, Miri, do you want to go?
Sure. Thanks, Karen, again for having me here. So after undergraduate, I first joined IBM as a technical sales. And I worked as more of a program managing role in the Watson AI. And then again, like the Litika, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right.
You got it though.
Got it, okay. Also transitioned to Amazon. So currently working at Amazon as a technical program manager. I'm working at Amazon Fresh.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. So firstly, if you guys could tell us a little bit about how your journey went after undergrad and how you got to where you are today, that would be really good.
Sure, maybe I can start. Just as I made an introduction of myself, that's the career path that I took after undergraduate. But right after undergraduate, what I did was I traveled the world for 6 months because I wanted to kind of see around the world and really figure out what I truly wanted to do. So for 6 months, I traveled through Europe and Asia and everything. And I really suggest for you to do the same. And after that, I joined the career path of IBM and Amazon. Currently, still working in Amazon. But it's been around 3 years after I graduated from MIT, and I'm still figuring out what I truly want to do. I'm still on the way. So that's the path I took after the undergraduate. I can hand it over to next.
Yeah, let us know how you want to do this. I can go next if.
Yeah, you can just pop up and contribute when you want.
All right, yeah. So, while I was actually in undergrad, I think I had 3 internships, one at a startup in DC and then another at Qualcomm in San Diego, and I actually did 2 summers at Qualcomm. But all of them were actually in software development, and I think my journey through those internships was actually the most revelatory in terms of what I actually wanted to do eventually. And I think, during my internship experiences, I kind of learned that I was actually really passionate about figuring out, what are the worthy problems that are solving and figuring out what is it that we should go build? And I actually learned that that's kind of like what I was driven by more than, actually building and coding. And I ended up kind of pursuing that path after undergraduate studies at Microsoft as a PM first. And then, naturally, I actually was a technical program manager at Amazon as well, like Mary. But yeah, that's kind of like how I went about it. But I'm happy to dig in if there's more questions on that. Popping it off to Samantha, maybe?
Yeah, I can go next. At Northeastern, it's a co-op school, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. So while I was there, I actually did 3 very different co-ops. 2 of them were with Raytheon, which is another defense contractor, and then one of them was more on the commercial side with Johnson & Johnson. But I was actually in their Neutrogena location out in Los Angeles, which was awesome. So I got to relocate and actually do some in the Boston area and then get to live across the country for a few months working there. So coming out of school, I knew that I still wanted to rotate through a few different roles because I wanted to figure out what I liked the best. I definitely learned a lot from the co-op experiences. I learned not that supply chain's not important, it just wasn't my particular forte, that I leaned more towards more of the technical problems or more of like the project management side of it, which was very, very valuable knowing that coming out of school. So graduating, I went through what's called the Operations Leadership Development Program with BAE, and what it forces you to do is rotate 3 times through 3 different jobs. Depending on where the jobs are located, you also might relocate to different locations as well. So through that, I started off in a very technical role, being a process engineer in one of their circuit card manufacturing floors. So very, very technical, like you're trying to build the circuit cards, you're solving problems, you're working, and you have to have a certain volume going through every day. And then from there, I rotated again into a different technology, doing more of like the front end of it, which is like ordering the parts, working with suppliers, helping work through different issues that we have and getting parts out to the floor. And then I moved finally into more of a supervisory role on the floor where you actually run a line. And for me personally, I found that I liked that role the best. I liked the flow side of it, which kind of leans to my IE background. So I stayed with that group, working in more of that supervisory role, but then also working on what's called their pilot line, which takes like new products that we have never made before. Because we are, what I work with is a defense contractor, so we have some very like high technology, hard problems to solve, is what I always say. So some of the things we have to build are not the easiest. So what was really cool is I got to work with a team that bridges the gap between that engineering thought of we're going to do this really cool thing to a how do we translate this into something we're going to manufacture on the floor and we can replicate over and over again. And from that, I found my path into program management, which is where I am now. And it was through those experiences of learning, like I like the management side, but I also like getting to understand how things are built, things get put together. So having the technical side, that I found the role I'm in now, which is a program manager. And what's cool about that is you still get that interaction, but you get to work with the customers that use the end products. And so since we're a very military-based company, and we have some commercial stuff too, but I work mainly in the military sector, it's cool because you get to learn the technology, you get to talk with the people that use the products every day, and you get to help them find solutions that at the end of the day, and part of why I love my job so much, will save lives because they're using them in highly stressful situations and they have to work first time, every time, they can't malfunction. So it's a very, very cool role. But I will say, especially for those coming out of undergrad, it took me like 5 years to get to like, this is the group that I want. So like a piece of advice that I'll give, and I know we get into it later, is don't be afraid to move around if you don't like initially what you go into. And it's okay if you have a job you don't like, because then you learn like, hey, I don't really like this, but I've taken that this isn't my cup of tea, but I learned something from it. And now I want to move to something else. So I kind of zigzagged my way through the different roles, but I was fortunate enough to work with a company that allowed me to rotate, allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do, and then kept providing me with really unique opportunities. So that's how I got to what I'm doing now. And then I guess we'll hand it back over. We have one more to go through.
Sure. So for me, after undergraduate, I was really excited about digging deeper into technology, and I had done a couple of internships on the research side, and I enjoyed being able to come up with something new, something that what did the future hold, and seeing if I could solve that kind of problems. So a combination of factors resulted in me applying to a bunch of schools in US, and luckily I got into Stanford. So right after undergraduate, I actually went to Stanford for a PhD in electrical engineering. And for those of you who have questions around graduate school, I can help with some of those questions. And graduate school is a very interesting experience. You're still trying to dig what problems you're going to go into. It brings a host of challenges. And after I graduated graduate school, which was still 7 years ago, even after that, I was not. So I always felt great about mentoring and teaching students. But the way academic career works, things did not all fall in line. So I spent some time in industry research labs. I was at Microsoft Research, which is entirely open-ended research, but still has this grounding assumption that your research has to have some impact on the company's bottom line and people, as opposed to in academic research, you can go build things which people may care about or not in 5 years from now. So I got to see a lot of that, build real things as part of my Microsoft research experience. I thought I might go back into academia, so I went back to Princeton and then eventually ended up back in Google Brain, which is still very research focused. So the projects I work on are, again, very open-ended, and yet the bottom line of the company has to matter in all the projects that we do. So I think there are some interesting questions that show up in what happens in academia versus industry research. And if you have questions around that, I'm happy to answer those. But at no point it was very clear which side is better. So I always made decisions based on what felt right in the moment and what I was most excited by.
Now let's focus a little bit more on the undergrad experience. So how did your career goals change during undergrad, and how did you decide what you wanted to do in the end?
So we're taking the same turn, or?
Yeah, anybody can start us off.
Okay, I can start again for this one. I highly agree with what Samantha said. As Samantha said, just take a different route and just find what you truly want, but it really takes a long time for a lot of people. So during the undergraduate, surprisingly, I had 8 different internships. Like, I really couldn't find what I wanted to do. So every IAP, every summer, I never rested, and I always took an internship, and it was all different ones. I started out as software engineering. I went into venture, I went to research, I went into product management and program management, like project management, and everything that I can possibly think of in the tech area. What I figured out on the way of those 8 different internships was, instead of what I truly wanted to do, I figured out what I didn't want it to do. I knew what I didn't want it to do, but there's so many other jobs out there. So just keep figuring out until you truly find, okay, I think I'm okay perhaps doing it, because I haven't landed at where, okay, this is it, because you yourself can change many times over the years, because even though you graduate after undergraduate, that doesn't mean that you are ending with your life. You're basically just starting your life there. So you're still okay to figure out what you wanted to do. So what I also recommend, just as Samantha recommended, is just try to take a different route if you don't feel your heart in there, and it's okay that you still haven't found it yet, but just try to take a different route, especially when you're still young and in college. That means you have so much opportunity there, and you're okay, and because there's no failure in life. So just keep going on, and I took a very difficult route for figuring that out, but highly agree with what Samantha said before.
So I'll add one more aspect to the notion of internships that definitely help decide the career goals, but it really helps if you can do informational interviews with people, especially because internships do not, if you're an undergrad right, in first year and you show up at a company, you might not have the technical training to be given the most technical problems and might not enjoy your experience. So it's much harder for you to get a sense of what that career might be like. So take your internship experience with a grain of salt. It's dependent on so many factors of who you hang out with and what problems are available at that point in time. But informational interviews go much further along, because you can ask people or even shadow people if they're willing to, and understand how people choose what they are choosing, and choose a bunch of different informational interviews, right? As Mary mentioned, across fields, whether that's research, whether that's program management, whether that's product management, all of those are open-ended. So I think there's a lot of value in being able to talk to people in different careers and asking questions. So, and the other set of things that I found interesting, and I was probably not exposed to it at that time, was doing some sort of personality tests or some way to figure out what you might enjoy, care about, and those sort of things, and seeing a match between the sort of career options that might be available, then doing the informational interviews. And then internships provide you a lot of answers, but they are slightly biased because you might not have all the skills to get the full experience.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add too, and I think Mary hit on it a little bit, is your values and like what your goals are going to change throughout your life. So I find like it's a hard thing like to get to accept sometimes, is people will be like, this is the path I'm supposed to be on, I'm going to keep doing this and doing this. But like, especially as you get older and like you decide like maybe like at this particular point, like staying in this one local area because that's near my family, that's an important value to me, or finding a career that has a good work-life balance, that's a value to me. Or you might be on the opposite end where you're like, I don't really have any like ties to a certain area, I'm okay moving around, or I want a job with travel. But I think recognizing what's important to you as you go through your life and your career in undergrad, and being able to adapt and understanding it's okay if you kind of go different paths, is a very important thing. And I find that it's something that, at least especially like when I'm working with like entry-level students sometimes, or entry-level employees, they're so set on like the one path, and not that that's a bad thing, but I kind of be like, you know, it's okay if your values change between your first year at the company and the second year. Like, that's perfectly normal. And I think learning to adapt your job and the role that fits your life at a certain point is the way that you're going to find that balance, or find something that makes you happy. And honestly, you might love your job for like a few years, and then you're like, you know what, this isn't working for me, I want to look and do something else, and that's okay. And I think we've hit on that, but I think that's a really big thing, and something too when you're an undergrad, like you have the ability to try out all these different things and like fail a lot if like you get into different roles that don't work out well. And it's almost like a little like a safe zone where you're learning so that you're more prepared when you get out there.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that I've just heard so far from Akansha, Samantha, and Mary. I think, you know, one thing that I was gonna probably like, you know, plus one on what Akansha said about like finding your strengths, as well as actually connecting with people who can actually who actually have similar strengths and similar weaknesses in certain degree, can really help you understand like the path that you want to take. I think for me, you know, I feel like my goals like changed so drastically throughout, you know, right as I was like graduating high school and deciding undergrad, what should I pursue in college. I was like pretty set on doing like aeronautical and aerospace engineering. And then freshman year, I realized actually what I really like is electrical and computer engineering. And then as I was, you know, going in through my undergrad courses, I actually learned that I actually really love building software. And it just, as you, it kind of like realize that there's like two sides of problems. Like there's problems that you are attracted to solving in abstract, and then there's problems that you actually enjoy solving. And it's so important to actually just try, experiment, and then kind of figure out what is it that you truly enjoy, and not just like an idea and abstract. So I think that, plus talking to a lot of people, you know, in the industry or in academia, or really like people that come across the student organizations, even, for example, can really influence you in understanding all the possible opportunities that are kind of out there. Because like when you're in college, you're kind of shielded on what are really all the different industry job paths that actually exist. Like, for example, I didn't know what a PM was when I was in college, and it wasn't until like even as an intern in some of the teams that I worked with, there weren't PM, so I didn't actually even come across that role during the internships. It was actually through just pure talking to people during conferences and understanding what is it that they do, what does that mean, and then just kind of like going from that, it led me to sort of this new career path that I should be exploring, and it turned out like that's actually what I ended up doing, and it was nothing that I planned throughout my entire like undergraduate course. So yeah, be open to just like talking to people, learning about everything, and see like where it takes you.
Leading out from that, if you guys were in undergrad again, is there anything you would do differently this time around?
So I think the aspect of undergrad that most people did not realize when I was an undergrad was that what you're learning is the course material, but what you're learning really is how to learn. You're learning how to be curious, how to be passionate, finding what you're curious about, and then learning how to learn. And that is something that has served me well as I have gone across and taken different sets of projects. And it almost made me fearless because I could jump into a new field and pick it up very quickly. So if you learn how to learn, as opposed to and understand what's your process for learning, it makes life much simpler because you're joining industry in 10 years, we don't know what technology industry changes very quickly. So things will be different, we know, but what they will be, you don't know. So that's one aspect of undergrad that if I were to go back, I would pay a lot more attention to as to what is the process for my learning, and eventually you figure it out.
I can't agree more to what just Akansha said. After undergraduate, what I realized was more than the knowledge of what I learned during the courses, it was more of really how I learn and how fast I learn and how efficiently I learn. So I can't agree more to that. But I also recommend having some leadership experience during college to lead something and start something, just as Karen is currently doing, leading URTC. What I did really well, and I'm proud of myself, is leading URTC as well, because I've started URTC as a first general founder there, and it's been continuing for 8 years since after I started this conference, and I'm really, really happy to see how successful this has become. And I really think that's one of the greatest things I've ever done in college, for having to have an experience of leading something and try to organize something and have a leadership experience. And that really pushes me to start digging into what needs to be done and what needs to be closed into the gap. So really highly recommend, if you're still an undergraduate or whenever, just try to have that leadership experience and leading the team.
Yeah, I actually totally 100% agree with that. I think I was super involved with IEEE in college, and actually through IEEE, like I met Akansha, for example, when I was a student, and she was a PhD candidate at Stanford, and there were so many other people like that I actually got to meet. It was super eye-opening through what you can actually like sort of learn through that experience. But I think if I were to just kind of think back, I would actually almost get out of my ECE bubble to a certain degree, because one of the things that, for me, like liberal arts was just kind of like an afterthought in terms of like exploration, be it technical electives like statistics or actual like liberal arts electives like psychology or writing. In undergrad, they ended up becoming these like check boxes for me for graduation. And but after graduation, I actually realized that so much of how you succeed in what you do is not just about the technical acumen that you bring to work, but it's also about having really good storytelling skills, having good public speaking skills, or how are you able to like influence others to come build with you. And a lot of these things you actually don't learn in your actual ECE core curriculum, but it's things that you learn by, getting involved in student organizations, by, starting something or leading something, or when you're taking classes outside your curriculum. And I wish I took a class in theater or like in behavioral psychology, so I could be like well versed in what it means to just really interact with communities and actually like bring the best out of like others. And I think that's something that I've kind of like took a keen interest after graduation, and I've been doing that sort of like on a personal time. But I really wish I got started much earlier in college, and yeah, I think that's like probably the one thing that I would redo.
Yeah, so I agree with what everyone said. I think for me, when I was thinking back on it, the one thing that I regret or wish I would have done a little differently is I definitely took the time to get to know students and professors, but I don't think I took enough advantage of the amount of knowledge that a lot of like professors or just other associates that you will meet through the university have for advice after graduation. So like one of the things I think that, at least for me, that I took for granted is like, a lot of your professors, like they have real world experience, they can bring those in, but you don't realize how valuable a lot of their experience or taking some time to talk with them to learn about what they liked or didn't like, or even just having that connection that you keep like after college that can help you like navigate as you're going through your career. I definitely was fortunate, and then I did get to work closely with like some of the professors, and obviously was in classes with them. But if I could go back, I think I would have tried to value that more and focus a little bit more to get to strengthen those connections, or even just like sit and learn a little bit about the industry and some of the careers and jobs that they did. Because I think it would have helped me have a smoother path. Not that I didn't learn a lot, but it would have made things a little easier, because I found that there's a lot of stuff that I was like, oh, I just didn't realize. I think we talked about it earlier. This was even a job, or this was something I could do with this career. And then I was looking and I was like, I had a professor that used to do that. I could have maybe, I don't know, reached out and asked like, hey, what is this? Or while you're an undergrad, it's a perfect time to explore and make those connections and take advantage of it, because like a lot of schools bring like amazing guest speakers on, and just have these really good events that are great for networking.
Perfect. And leading up from that, so is there anything about life after undergrad that surprised you and that you weren't expecting while you were in undergrad?
I'll start because we mentioned it earlier. It surprised me like how little of some of the technical knowledge you use. Like you spend so much time like learning in these like core engineering courses, all this stuff. And not that you don't need that or need those skill sets, but what'll end up happening is you won't really use too much of that, or you'll be able to look it up, or you'll find experts that can help you. What you end up needing is the like more, I call them like the soft skills, the ability to work with a team, the ability to pull people together, the ability to like work with different personalities that aren't yours. And like you learn a lot of that through undergrad and your class projects and stuff that you do. But it surprised me how much of the real world relies heavily on that, but still having that technical background to solve the hard problems.
Yeah, and I agree with that totally. And I think there's like probably two things for me personally. I think one is just this realization that you don't actually have to be an expert in something at something to actually go solve and tackle that problem. And it's not so much about whether you can personally solve that problem. It's more about, can you fall in love with that problem and actually, bring the right people together to rally around it, to go solve it. And I think that's sort of like one thing. The other thing is also, I think more personally for me, college was all about fitting in, conforming to like what was sort of expected of you by your peers, or by like just in college in general. But I think after graduation, I actually realized that it's your differences, and like what you actually, how you're different in general is actually the magic for you personally, but also for everyone that you actually touch too. So I think that's also like another big realization, that like you really take the time to celebrate the differences, because they're truly like assets and not something to just like shy away from.
For me, I had a bit of a sad realization. After the undergraduate, I went into the career path, and I thought, well, okay, I was in a like best engineering school, and I learned so much. I was at the top and all that. And I went into the career path, and I realized how little I was in a company. Like I thought I would achieve so much right after college, but like after graduating and going into the career path, I realized like I don't know, like the climbing up the ladder in the corporate is just so difficult, and it takes a time. And also like meeting the CEO of the company, like Jeff Bezos or Ginny Rometty, then it was like, oh, meeting a celebrity, like, did you meet Jeff Bezos? Oh my gosh, like it's like that level. It's, I don't know. So I thought like I would become like CEO and I become like amazing leader and all that. But it's just so difficult to just go through the river of the society and of the corporate ladder or of the even startup world just to be a like big person that I imagine myself to be. So I'm still gaining that experience and still kind of step by step, but it's really difficult to jump in the society, in the career path. If if you have any advice for me there, like I would love to take it, but I'm personally struggling to realize that, oh my gosh, it's just so difficult to just like be up there in the society and the career path. So still taking a little step by step.
I think the only thing I would add is that in undergraduate, you take your health and your mental health and physical health often for granted because you're just out of college and you'll eat whatever and you will have all kinds of work lifestyle that pulling all-nighters works great. But I think if once you enter the workplace, whether that's academic or industry, you learn the value of sleeping, the value of rest, and really bringing yourself to whatever work mode works for you, but having some sort of ability to take care of your health and your mental health, because without that, you are not able to function well. And that's not something that any undergraduate really learns, even when you do the leadership things, because pulling all-nighters is completely okay.
You, in fact, brag about it. I remember in college, like we would brag that, oh, I pulled 2 all-nighters in a row, and I'm still good to go. But like you realize soon it's about balance in the real world.
Yeah, and you really find that valuable because you're working with people across backgrounds, and it's being able to pay attention in whatever interactions you have requires you to have that presence.
Yeah, all of this was very amazing advice. So where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? So what are some of your goals for the future?
I was just gonna say, I actually stopped making 5 to 10 year plans. Almost like right after graduation. I think that probably like around graduation, actually before I even, like came into college, I had this like perfect 7-year plan, and none of the things that I actually had in that ended up being the things that I did. I think some theoretically, like they still align like thematically, but in general, I think for me personally, like making 5 to 10 year plans just kind of boxes you into this is what you're really shooting for, right? And I don't know, maybe you're not going to be open to opportunities like when you make those like sort of plans. So I actually personally just stopped making 5 to 10 year plans. I think like my plans are more locally aimed to like, here's what I want to do in the next 6 months, because I have a better view on what actually is coming up in the next 6 months. So yeah.
I'm sorry, but I have to agree to that. I thought I would be the only one to say that. And I was worried that I might kind of transition the negative vibe for that. I totally agree. I stopped making the next 5 to 10 years of myself too. That really boxes me, and I found it really not working for myself. It's very different from everyone, but for myself, it doesn't work because as Likita said, it really boxes me for where I should go when I can be flexible as I want to and travel different paths. But if I want to set a certain goal in 5 to 10 years, I feel like I'm like blinding myself for like just seeing other opportunities. So I also stopped making that. But I have like a maybe 6-month goal and maybe like tomorrow goal or today goal. So, when you're young, people used to like ask you like, what's your dream? Like, what do you want to become? But what I recommend asking yourself is like what you want to do and why you want to do and like how you want to do, to becoming more of an active verb instead of a noun. So I'm trying to phrase my dream into a verb and actions instead of a noun. why I want to, okay, like teacher or nurse, maybe, yeah, but like, okay, I want to like work in the health industry to like help other people in this area because I want to do that and that. That really opens up the opportunities what you can become. So maybe 5 to 10 years, I don't know, maybe I can be still in the corporate world or I can start something. But what I'm sure is I want to be at the leadership position and try to help the next generation to kind of jump to find what they want to do and what they're good at, just to help try to find themselves. So I'm personally making a lot of YouTube videos just to transmit my message, what I learned over the years, to the next generation. So that's my personal goal that I'm trying to achieve on the side.
So I will add a couple of things in terms of the 5 to 10-year goals. So I think the 5 to 10-year goals that are really valuable are around the ability to take care of your health. So having some goals that I will keep my health in good shape, or I want to be financially in a good health, or I want to have a career which is ethically in a strong background, or I want to be a strong public speaker. I mean, those are aspects that are easy to plan, and those are personal goals. Given the pace at which technology moves, it's hard to plan out what exact level you might be in industry. But I think the interesting questions that I like to ask often for myself are that in the next 5 to 10 years, what are the areas that are going to be most disruptive? And if I were to solve problems in that area, would that make a big impact to society in a positive way? So that is the one aspect that I try to think about, and often choose problems based on that. Because if you're solving problems that we need solved as part of the society, whether that involves pollution, climate change, which I was trying to do a little bit of as part of a 20% project out of Google. It's called the Celestini program in India, getting undergrads to build things to measure air pollution. Or similarly, I'm working in Google on technologies that hopefully we'll see become bigger in the next 5 years. So if you solve problems that are, depending on where your interest lies, that will lead to technologies that will impact large parts of the society, then that's likely to be a better, or ask yourself the question of what are problems that we need solved, in whatever roles you are able to come and solve them. I think that's a much more interesting question, as opposed to saying, who will I be? Because I am part of a much bigger society that will be making that change happen. So that's how I approach a lot of these 5 to 10-year things. And I think there are a lot of good examples in that space that I can give you. But the most, the one that stands out is that with this pandemic, for that matter, like video technologies are taking off like crazy. Connectivity is becoming a very important issue. We need everyone to be digitally connected. Climate change is something that we're realizing about now. Health industry is going digital. All of these interesting problems that we are seeing now, we will need the next generation to solve. So those are questions that I find are way more interesting in terms of planning out, and am I solving the problems that would matter to the next generation?
Yeah, and one thing I'll add too to kind of echo what makes, I think, the 5 to 10-year plan more and more difficult as you like progress in your career is that you find, like, especially like as you get to like the point of like maybe like settling down or finding an area, is that your values and what you want to do change and can change very, very rapidly. And you also find like, hey, something's popped up on the radar that I didn't even think I would be interested in, or there's this unique opportunity and I want to have that flexibility to be able to go and move around. So one of the things I try to do with my like plans when I'm trying to figure out like what I want to do is I focus on like, okay, like what are my strengths and what are the things I'm not as strong at, and what are some opportunities that I could take or I could move into that help me fill out like some of the weaker points and just my knowledge skill set. Like I know, like I'll speak personally, like I haven't had that many strategic roles. So like if I see something that's maybe a little bit more high level and less like day to day, I might lean towards, you know what, my goal is to maybe move into that group for right now or try to get some experience there, just because I know that personally I might not be as strong in that area. Or another good example is like oh, there's like a new opportunity like within the company that popped up and it's this new technology, but it's not something I thought I might have wanted to go and do. But I've heard from other engineers that this is a very exciting opportunity. It's something you I'd only get the chance to do once or twice. So I kind of lean more towards having a map of what I've done and what I've liked, and maybe what are some areas that I could branch out into over the next few years to gain more of those skill sets. And that's my approach, is I tend to lean more towards like, what can I, what's going to work well for me? What can I gain, or what can I help others gain from moving into different roles as I move forward? So a little bit of a different approach, instead of saying like, I'm going to be X role, like at this time. Like, it's not a bad thing to have those goals, but you find that like, it's very, very hard to be like, oh, I'm like a program manager and I'm going to be the director of this department in like 4 or 5 years. Like, those tend to be very hard goals to achieve. So trying to like, maybe that's like long-term, okay, you want to get there, but having these stepping areas that you want to move into to gain like knowledge, or maybe to like help out in a certain area, is, at least for me, a little bit easier and more achievable. So that's what I tend to lean towards when I'm doing my plans.
Now we're going to open to some of the Q&A questions that have popped up. So how has the pandemic influenced how you work, look for a position? And maybe you guys can give some advice for people who are looking for jobs right now.
So I can start with that one. Our company, I think like most, has had to go to much more of a work from home or try to do things virtual type environment. And it can be very, very difficult. I feel like when you're looking for a job, especially if like you don't know the company, you have to do like a Zoom interview or an in-person interview. So like at least within my company, we have a mix. We have some people that are still in every day. We have some people that are working virtually. I will say there's definitely been some strains on like the network, and that's been like a brand new problem from an IT standpoint. So for those that are looking for a job, that's like a big need that I think a lot of companies are feeling right now. So that may be some cool problems to solve. But I'd say that one of the things I would advise, and it's just difficult trying to look for jobs or trying to figure things out, is try to use some of the networks that you might already have, or maybe like go on to like LinkedIn and like see what different people's roles are, or reach out or message, so you can get an idea like a company or a job I might be interested in. Because you'd be surprised at how much, at least within our company, like we're doing virtually now without like the in-person, and how much knowledge and information you can get about a certain role or a certain area just by like maybe reaching out and seeing what's available. I will say it can be very, very difficult to join a team if you're in a role that's going to end up being remote and you're coming on your remote, because you can't do the let me walk around and make those connections and friendships and get to know people. So what we've been trying to do, at least within our group, is we do a lot of like Zoom chats or like after work calls. We'll call them like virtual happy hour or something like that, just to try to help the new people assimilate on. And then another thing too is like we try to do like contact lists of like, you're new, but like here's all the people you might need to know and reach out to. And like we're trying to be more like, if someone randomly IMs you because, hey, I started this week and I need help with something, like, respond. So you have to be a little bit more proactive, which can be a little difficult depending on your personality. You really have to like reach out and be like, hey, I need help, or I'm going to introduce myself. So that's kind of how we're adapting.
Yeah, actually, I think COVID, the whole situation right now, it gives you a free pass to be unapologetically awkward. So you can actually like go reach out to anyone on LinkedIn and people would be very understanding. I feel like right now, for example, actually just recently spoke at Grace Hopper conference, and a big part of Grace Hopper is actually the career fair, and they canceled the career fair. And as part of that, lots of people's plans around like finding a gig through Grace Hopper was like disrupted. But what ended up happening, or what I saw for me as well as like some of my friends, is a lot of students like ended up just reaching out for a conversation and understanding like what opportunities exist. I think that proactive outreach from your end can go a long way. And right now, the whole world is actually kind of like at your feet to a certain degree to go make that happen, because it's no longer awkward to like randomly strike a conversation on LinkedIn or something with someone. It's super understandable. So definitely take advantage of that.
I have so much to say about finding a job during COVID, because I I quit a company without knowing the COVID was coming. Like it was at the beginning of the stage in like Jan or Feb, and I thought it was gonna die down soon. So I just quit my company and wanted to see the next step for myself. And the COVID kind of like blasted all over the world, and all my interview got canceled. And my career change, like had been taken drastically. So I've taken so many steps during COVID just to try to find a job, but it's been more successful than pre-COVID for myself. And I learned so much about the job transitioning. One key thing is about again, networking. Just to try to reach out through your network and just try to see all the job opportunities that's open. Like the big companies like Amazon, they're more actively hiring than pre-COVID. They have been blasted with their revenue and their demand, especially in Amazon Fresh too. So they're really hiring actively. But yeah, if you have any question about getting a job during COVID time, just ask me anything, because I've been struggling with that for months and months, and I have so much tips, and I made a video about it on YouTube. But if you have a personal question, please feel free to reach out to me as well.
I agree with what everyone said. I don't have more to add there.
Actually, one other thing I was going to mention, I think one of the things, the COVID-19, I think Akansha was like touching on this, like there's so many different industries that have seen sudden peak. One of the areas actually like that probably like people don't look to frequently is actually the government. One of the things that COVID-19 has actually done is expose a lot of cracks in the tech stack at government, that there's so much like hiring spike that's actually going on. So if you are interested in actually civic service, now is such a great time to get involved. So just I guess like a quick plug on the fellowship that I just did, White House Presidential Innovation Fellowship. There's that, and there's also like organizations that got spun up at the like starting points of COVID. One of them is called USDR, U.S. Digital Response. There's even like short-term 6-month stints that you can actually like go explore, and you're actually like using your tech skills for good, and you're learning something about an industry that has probably like not necessarily knocked on your door like private companies do. So definitely take the time to explore the newer industries that are actually like growing as part of COVID-19.
Another question that came up is, have you ever felt caught in an endless cycle of work or felt overwhelmed, and how did you overcome and deal with that?
So I think the endless cycle of work and that lack of motivation is pretty normal in almost all of these jobs, the industry careers specifically, but so it's true for academic careers. I think it really helps to build some, that's where my plug on the focus on health and having some ways to have social life outside work, or having some activities that really, so for me personally, I'm trained in improv theater, and I did that over 2 years. I like went and did every class possible, and I still do that right now, but more as a, so coming up with a set of activities that will no longer define your identity just based on your work performance, and keeping some attention on your physical and mental health is very important. And then there are all these wellness practices that you start to build in. So that can go anywhere from meditation to whatever other activities you add. All of those really help you with overwhelm and stress, and your companies might have more activities available for you. But the main thing to keep in mind is that your identity should not only be equal to what you accomplished at work. It needs to have a broader set of basis for you to feel good, because work will go up and down depending on where the project is.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I was going to say something very like similar, in that you really have to learn how to do a good like work-life balance, especially when you get to those like I don't know of a job, or I haven't heard of many jobs where you don't have peaks where you get like overwhelmed 1 week with work. So it's going to happen. I think in any industry, in any job, but I think like, at least for me, what's worked is recognizing that, yes, I need some time for my mental health and a break, and I need another activity to focus on that's not just work. I think at least for me, it helps because it breaks your mind away from work. It gives you like, just like, even if it's just an hour that you take to go to the gym or go on a run, or I like cooking. Like, I'll cook like a nice meal because I just want to get a break. It almost like resets your mind and helps you be more effective when you come back into work, is what I found. And I find that especially when you're first starting out, you have this need to like prove that like you can get everything done and you're the best employee and you're new, and so you don't want to let people down. But it's recognizing that it's equally important to make sure you take care of yourself and find something that you're interested in besides just work, as it is to being successful and getting your stuff done. And I think that you'll have those ebbs and flows. But the last tip I'll give too, at least the technique I use, is if I know I have a ton of stuff to get done, I try to be like, okay, I'm going to pick the top 5 things that I need to do. And yeah, other things might pop up, other distractions, but I just focus on, let's just get these 5 done. And then, you know what, if I don't get through all of them, or I don't get through all of my stuff, then I'm done. I'm going to shut off, and then I can come back tomorrow, because work will always be there, but other opportunities won't. And so I like completely echo what's just being said, because I really do think that you can very easily fall into a trap. Don't take the time to make sure you're taking care of yourself, and really having a good balance is something that can take a while to get to.
For our last question, how can an international student reach out to employers who will employ sponsored or visa, with so much issues on employers refusing to sponsor international students? And if you guys have any resources or recommendations on how to do that?
I think that's a tough question to answer, given that it has the international aspects right now. But let's hope that these things will clear up. Yeah, I mean, I think the employers are trying to do the right thing, but there is more forces at work in getting this aspect squared away. So I cannot say for every employer what they should do. It might be helpful to have multiple offers in hand if you have that ability, and pick an employer based on that, if that is the constraining factor. Yeah, that's pretty much where I would stand on that. I think there's also this, it's also useful to be flexible at this point in time, because the remote is very open, right? So there might be other countries where you can get sponsorship, and US might be especially hard at this point. So without taking specific names, if you can work remotely, is there a country you would like to work from? And are you able to convince your employer to work from there? And it works out in best interest for both of you. So you can't work around the rules, but can you make the rules work for you to give you a new experience?
Okay, so if no one else has anything to add, I think we have come to the end of our panel. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. Unfortunately, our conference is also coming to an end, but in a few minutes, we will have the closing ceremony if you guys want to stick around. Thank you, everyone.